Captain Marcus Chen had faced down plasma cannons, survived void exposure, and negotiated with 3 different hive mind collectives. But nothing in his 20 years of service had prepared him for the sight of Commander Ashara Kaveth pointing a dueling gauntlet at his chest in the middle of the Galactic Concordance Hall. "You dare insult the honor of House Kaveth?" Her voice carried across the marble floors, causing diplomats from a dozen species to scatter like startled prey animals. The Valorian warrior stood nearly 7 feet tall, her scaled skin shimmering with iridescent patterns that marked her as nobility among her kind. Marcus raised his hand slowly, keenly aware that half the security sensors in the hall were now locked onto their position. "Commander, I simply stated that humanity's mining rights in the outer reaches are non-negotiable." "That's not an insult, it's a fact." Her triple-jointed fingers tightened around the gauntlet, and Marcus could see the energy cells beginning to glow. Valorians took their honor seriously, and apparently his diplomatic bluntness had crossed some invisible line he hadn't even known existed. "Then you will defend this fact with your life," she hissed. "By the ancient codes, I challenge you to single combat. Refuse, and your species will be marked as cowards before the entire concordance." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Politicians. They'd sent him here as a military advisor, not a gladiator. But he knew the game. Refuse the duel, and humanity's reputation in the galactic community would suffer irreparable damage. Accept it, and he'd probably die in the next 10 minutes. "Fine," he said, shrugging off his formal jacket. "But we do this by concordance rules. First blood, combat arms only, no lethal force." Something flickered in Ashara's eyes. Respect, perhaps, or surprise that he'd accepted. She nodded curtly and began activating her gauntlet's combat protocols. Marcus rolled up his sleeves, exposing his forearms. The gesture was purely practical. He needed mobility. But the moment his right arm came into view, Ashara's movement stopped. Her eyes, all 3 of them, locked onto his skin. Marcus glanced down at his arm, confused by her reaction. Then he saw it. The tattoo he'd gotten 15 years ago during shore leave on Europa Station. He'd been drunk, nostalgic, and the artist had been talented. The ink had settled into his skin in a way that seemed almost alive. A serpentine dragon coiling around his forearm, its scales rendered in blacks and deep blues, its eyes burning with an eternal amber fire. But Ashara wasn't just staring. She was frozen, her gauntlet hanging limply at her side. Her scales had shifted to a pale white, a color Marcus had never seen on a Valorian before. "Where?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Where did you get that mark?" "It's just a tattoo," Marcus said slowly, uncertain why this mattered. "I got it on—" "No." She stepped closer, her earlier aggression completely evaporated. "That is not just a tattoo. That is the Serpent of the Eternal Guard, the symbol of the Kaveth Protectorate. My family's crest from before the Great Scattering." Marcus felt ice settle in his stomach. "That's impossible. This is an earth dragon, from ancient Chinese mythology. It's been part of human culture for thousands of years." Ashara's hand trembled as she reached out, stopping just short of touching his arm. "May I?" He nodded, too confused to do anything else. Her fingers traced the air above his skin, following the dragon's coils. "The 7-flame crown," she whispered. "The twin whisker sensors. The pearl of wisdom clutched in the 3rd claw." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with something between awe and terror. "This is not a coincidence, human. This is proof." "Proof of what?" "That the old stories were true." She withdrew her hand, her scales slowly returning to their normal color. "My grandmother told me tales when I was a hatchling. Tales of the first dispersal, when our people fled the dying homeworld. She said that not all ships made it to Valoria. Some were lost in the void. Some—" She paused, her voice dropping. "Some crashed on primitive worlds, their crews stranded, their technology failing. She said they tried to survive, to integrate, knowing they would never see home again." Marcus felt his world tilting. "You're saying, your Earth, your ancient mythology." Ashara gestured at his tattoo. "What if it wasn't mythology at all? What if my ancestors crashed on your world millennia ago? What if they became your legends, your dragons, your gods?" She laughed, a sound somewhere between wonder and despair. "The serpent was our guardian, our protector. We carved it into our ships, our armor, our very bodies, and somehow, impossibly, it survived the ages in your culture." The hall had gone completely silent. Every diplomat, Every security officer, every translator drone was frozen, listening to this impossible revelation. Marcus stared at the tattoo on his arm, seeing it with new eyes. The scales that seemed almost reptilian, the intelligence in those amber eyes, the way the artist had insisted on getting the claws just right, though Marcus had never understood why it mattered. "So what does this mean?" he asked quietly. Ashara deactivated her gauntlet completely and placed it on the ground, a gesture of total disarmament among her people. "It means we are not enemies, Captain Shen. It means that somewhere in the deep past your people gave sanctuary to mine, fed them, learned from them, remembered them." Her voice cracked slightly. "It means humanity carries a debt my house can never fully repay. I think," Marcus said carefully, "that after 10,000 years, we can call it even." She laughed again, and this time it was genuine. Around them, the hall slowly came back to life as diplomats realized the duel was over before it had truly begun. "The mining rights," Ashara said. "Take them. House Kaveth withdraws its objections." Marcus shook his head. "No, we negotiate fairly. As equals. As—" He glanced at his tattoo again. "As family, apparently." Ashara extended her hand in the human gesture she'd obviously studied. "As family," she agreed. As their hands clasped, Marcus couldn't help but smile. He'd come to the concordance expecting politics and posturing. Instead, he'd discovered that humanity's greatest strength, its ability to preserve stories, to remember, to honor the past, had just earned them an ally they never knew they had, and all because of a drunken tattoo on Europa Station. Humanity. Fuck yeah, indeed.